This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus. Tune in for another exciting episode of wonder, imagination, and discovery.
Recent Tartarians.
Она образует всеобщие закономерности, определяющие законы классической физики для нашего
Sometimes I
мира.
look at the moon and just think, the skin's beautiful. Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown.
Что касается энергии нано, то она превышает ядерную в немыслимое число раз. 10 в 74 степени.
That's it. That's it. That's it. With your arms now. That's it. That's it.
Thank you for watching Xirtus. Keep listening. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe and share and support. It really helps. Coming up next, Xirtus.
By the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's gone.
Something like that. So how are y'all doing tonight? Good to see you.
This is Synctank, though. We are on Synctank. This isn't
right.
just okay.
This is the ambiguity. The ambiguity of the intro. At first, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. You're right. When you have it was new things. But hey,
No.
Will Morgan, Alex of Cryptocubrology, David Plate. I think it's pretty clearly a synchronicity show. When you've got these names, this is some sync liners if I've ever seen any. Will, how you been?
Not bad. How are you guys?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys?
Great.
I'm on a gravy train with biscuit wheels.
All right. Well, Alex of Cryptocubrology, it's been a minute since we've seen you. What have you been up to? I know you've been doing a lot of synchronicity research as well. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah.
That's pretty fair.
Honestly, the last month or two have been really shitty for me, so that's why I haven't been around. I haven't felt very good, I was starting to feel good, and then I got this news that Mark LeClaire died.
Yeah.
Oh,
and that's
right.
been that was pretty heavy for me, but it's onward we go, and it's nice to be here with David and Will, because they both knew Mark, and I thought we could talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, maybe we want to get into that. David, do you want to, for people who aren't familiar, kind of give a background?
Mark LeClaire was fucking incredible, and so he had a mind that worked like no other mind I've ever encountered. He had a blog called The Wrong Way Wizard that I was introduced to in I think 2009, and that kind of set the stage for me as far as internet synchronicity goes. That and Live from the Logosphere from who's that?
Kevin Halcott.
Kevin Halcott, exactly. And so it was really impactful. So I'd say, maybe 20% of the extra weird facts that I know about Kubrick that I'll spout off actually originally came from Mark LeClaire. And so he never really got, I think, a lot of the credit that he deserved. I think he was, in a sense, plagiarized a lot. Maybe not verbatim word for word, but a lot of people took ideas from him and represented them as their own kind of thesis because he was a lesser known person, so he was really easy to lift from. And I think I don't think he cared, honestly, very, very much about that. He didn't feel to me like that was his focus necessarily. He felt like it was his duty to just release a lot of data and ideas and
right, and not to be worried about what people did with it. So that was something important about, and I think we all kind of have to be okay. For a while there, synchronicity research was cute and kind of ambiguously innocuous, right? It's cool, yeah, we're talking about Kennedy, it's been a long time. But for whatever reason, when you start looking at things, you start seeing how things go, you might pick up on how people are running the world or how the world itself runs itself or something like that. And I think people got really upset and worried that some of this information that used to seem innocuous really was starting to add up and matter. And it wasn't that he had a political bias, but this is about the point when they started accusing people of political bias for everything. And it's really interesting because I remember feeling kind of sympathetic in that same respect, saying, hey, no, shouldn't we be addressing and analyzing and looking into these things, and being shut down and on Facebook and things about the same time that Mark was. So I don't know how you feel, but I mean, it seemed like he didn't give a damn about what was socially acceptable. He was more trying to find out what was objectively synchronistic.
He was like a tuning fork. He had stuff coming in, and he was kind of overwhelmed by it all, I think. And he had there's a podcast, I think, on the Sync book somewhere where he talks about his whole near-death experience.
Well, he specifically, he says someone tried to kill him.
No,
Alex found the Wayback Machine, thank God.
From the inside out, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. No, he tried to hang himself, and he had a permanent scar on his neck from it. If you looked at him closely, you could see it. And when he was younger, he clicked his heels together, said "There's no place like home," and kicked the chair out from underneath. One of the most I was at a really extremely low point in my life at one point when Amy, my girlfriend of 4.5 years, told me I had a week to get my stuff out of the house, and she left. And that morning, I called up Mark LeClaire. And the reason I called up Mark was because I felt like Mark was somebody he just came to my mind as somebody that would understand being it wasn't about what happened to me. It wasn't about the specifics. Like, that was kind of silly, actually. It was just like that he felt like he understood like pain. So it's like, I called up Mark, and I talked to him for probably a few hours on Skype. It's not like it was recorded or anything, but yeah, I fucking cried at work when Bill sent me the message, and then Bill cried at work and said he needed to take some time off. He works at a school, But yeah, Mark was an interesting person. My God.
Even Alan has made videos that have addressed the Simba Obama issues that in one respect or another might have been a bit taboo for synchronicity research. For whatever reason or another, we were supposed to not look into certain things because some of these people are heroes or whatever. What does that mean, right? I mean, it just seems crazy. Mark looked in anyway.
Thing was kind of Buddhist in a way, like in a sense of acknowledgement of suffering and the suffering that exists in the world. And he saw the synchromysticism community, Jay Kotze and Goro and all these other people, as kind of avoiding that subject. And it was kind of feeling like it's more emphasis on the mystic kind of everybody feel good kind of thing. And he was always pushing back against that and saying, no, this world is kind of fucked up and evil and in some ways, and suffering.
Mark had a maturity level that the others didn't. Mark was a little bit older, but he had also he knew more things than most of the other individuals who were around at that time. Even his writing style was more mature, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a childish sense of humor about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was very Buddhist in that aspect. He was kind of a laughing Buddha who kept reminding you that the world was shit.
So this is the thing in general, and not to just romanticize and eulogize, but what we looked at and found as valuable for Mark is what's missing in general from most research. People are afraid to look into things because they don't want to offend anybody, and they don't want to make people aware that humanity is full of dark-sidedness and self-hate and looking, this is the thing. We're not a perfect humanity. It's not a perfect world. Vegetarians would be eaten by nature, right? And I don't know. I think that's this is also why his pages were deleted. I'm glad you found his Wayback Machine copies.
No, he deleted his own blog.
Yeah, he deleted his own stuff.
Apple after everyone started the way things went, and was it 2016, 2017? basically.
I think a lot of people in the community kind of relate to their stuff as a mandala a bit. In fact, I think, Subliminal Synchrosphere, that guy who goes by Horse Lever Fat from Ireland, I think he's kind of like that. Like, even though that stuff is still up, it's like he treats it like a mandala. Like, he's just building and building his feet at any moment. It could just go whoosh. And it's like that kind of happens when you go so deeply into material,
Well, it's real easy to paint yourself into a corner in sync work.
So we're talking about a fallen friend who was a synchronicity artist and or expert, however you put it, and the kinds of information that he put together that eventually he deleted because it got so deep and so heavy that it kind of freaked people out. And they're like, we don't know if we want to look into that on the sync book. We were like happy looking into, Hannah Montana synchronicities. We didn't really want to know about the school shooters. And the stars. I don't know if is that what I missed?
Kind of. I mean, he kind of got most sort of. Well, I came across him for his brilliant breakdown of Eyes Wide Shut and Stanley Kubrick, and his kind of real. I don't know what you call it, but his thesis, in a lot of ways, was that is that Stanley Kubrick was evil, and that he was not like exposing truths about the world, but sort of bragging about them, and in fact was like the architect of a lot of it, and including 9/11, which in this essay here in Eyes Wide Shut, he basically claims that Eyes Wide Shut is actually set in a post 9/11 world, even though it came out 2 years beforehand, and he goes to elaborate lengths to kind of prove that. And that kind of hit me as just like, what? That's fucking crazy. Like, but here I am 10 years later with an account called Cryptocubrology, and I've basically built everything off of that kind of notion that there's something different about Kubrick and what he was saying in his films that is like not really nice necessarily. There's something scary about it.
It's that suspension of disbelief. Like, he could just be like, Kubrick's influence was, there's no end to it. So like when he's entertaining something, he's just like to the full extent. You're like, well, how could he have influenced that? And he's like, I don't care, he did.
So Alex, can I ask you a question about your own work? What is your main thesis?
I don't know if I could sum that up in a sentence. I don't know if I really even know yet. I'm gonna have to write a book or something about it to do that. But so it is sort of a unified field theory of synchronicity. What?
Do you view Stanley as a positive or a negative influence?
I'm somewhere in between. I think there's like two sides to it. I also don't rule out the possibility of like double, triple agent sort of stuff. Like,
conspiring against the co-conspirators kind of shit. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Andy,
like,
what do you feel?
The stuff that he was encoding.
I was gonna say, I had this conversation recently too. Might have been with Eddie, but we were talking about how it's like, because we can only guess at their motives. Because we can only guess at their motives, we do guess, and we create so many different possibilities from those guesses. And that's the thing. If we don't know their real motive, then we have nothing to stand on, really. It's crazy. And so I don't know. I'm not really sure what to think about it. Because if we could suppose that they just want to live Playboy lifestyles and have us all just as bottom feeders and everything's just this material world, if we want to ignore everything else, that's a thing. That's a threat. But it's not.
But who are we talking about? Because like that's the thing. Is like Kubrick, like first of all, like just so many levels to it. First of all, he hated fucking Hollywood.
Right.
And that's why I kind of apparently have a unique position that I feel like fucking Spielberg pissed all over his grave with fucking AI, because it's everything that he didn't want it to be as stated by him. And like so like I don't know. I feel like he definitely like people say he was isolated recluse or whatever, but he had people visiting his place all the goddamn time, all the time. And there's so many rooms.
He like had the internet before the internet, and like, and that's sort of the weird omnipresence of him.
He had a lot of synthesizers, and you just like leave them on all the time.
Well, he answered all his letters too. How many fucking people like take the time to type out letters back to just people who have questions even? And there's like an amazing resource of stuff in there that you'd be like, what the fuck is he saying to this? Like, and it makes you question everything you thought you knew about his movies. And his movies come across as so simple, but then they have these levels of depth that you like. I can watch Eyes Wide Shut and every time see something I missed. Like every time. That's just crazy, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the reason why I brought up real quick, just the reason why I brought that up about not knowing the motives is directly about this. It's like, again, I like to say that it seems that the subject matter is more controlled opposition usually than the individual, and maybe even at that level, but I don't know. That could be hopeful thinking too.
Right.
I want to read something from Mark on his Eyes Wide Shut paragraph here, which actually was, if anybody know that book, The Most Dangerous Book in the World, 9/11 is a Mass Ritual.
Yeah, it's around here somewhere.
He's quoted in that.
S.K. Bain's book.
Yeah, Mark's got a quote in there, and this is from that paragraph where he says, talking about 9/11, any open-minded meditation upon September 11, 2001 floods the mind with at first incomprehensible riddles. The brave seek answers and begin to connect the dots. A shape begins to appear. The seeker can stop with a complete hypothesis. Evil men, shadow men, bankers, and oil men, a secret one-world power. Some seekers go deeper into the woods, satanic goofball cultists in their midnight rituals. Nazi connections. The Fourth Reich steps out from behind the American flag. Not satisfied, a few scrabble onward. And at least rudimentary knowledge of occult technology is a must-have. Occult science is that of metaphor, and the big truth of 9/11 is that it is a hierophantic event, planned for 2,000 years by the priests of On and Tibet, and altogether inevitable. Beyond this third degree, aspirants court the abyss itself, gaze into the yawning yaw of Yahweh and cry out, more light. I just always love that.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
More light. It just captures the bottomless pit that is like conspiracy / sync research, and it's like it's not about the conclusion. It's falling down the hole and learning more and wanting to know more.
Well, it's like it seems like Fight Club intuitive, right? The move, what's it called? In the cinema scene, editing, right? If you're making a TV show and you don't like what you're making a TV show about, then you put all of your effort into the parts of it that aren't the script. You're not writing the script, or if you are, you're presenting it in the weirdest way possible, so you tell another story. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, but so the thing about Mark was like he did a thing that I've seen very rarely in my life, where it's like somebody will have a thought that is so long and so complex, and you feel like you're verging on like craziness, like schizophrenia type shit, but then it comes back around and it's actually lucid and ultimately concise. And it's something that so it happens with psychedelics sometimes, and you see it with like musicians, like with like Jimi Hendrix or something. It's like weird. It's like, okay, I'll give you an example to try and explain the phenomenon. So like I was at Rain Dance Campout one time in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and my boss at the time, who owned a record store, Jonathan, he was playing while he was DJing while he was high as hell on mescaline. And he kind of overdosed himself on mescaline, and with his friend who was DJing with him. And there was times where it would start. It's kind of glitchy electronica anyway, but there was times where it start to drift, and you're like, oh fuck, it's going to train wreck. Like it's just he's not keeping it together. But it still sounded almost kind of cool because you're like, oh, because like if that was intentional. And there was this girl who was like, everyone was seeing Tipper. So there's like 3 people in the room, in this big room. So everyone was at another part of the event. And this woman walked up to my boss, and she was like dancing like crazy, like doing crazy dance. And she walked up to him and she said, if this doesn't come back, like as he's mixing, she says, if this doesn't land the way it needs to, I'm going to lose it. Like she was literally like, she was warning him. She's like, I'm going to fucking freak out, and like not in a good way, you know? And I saw kind of some terror in my boss's face because he could see that like she was serious. And when it came to the crucial point, it landed completely, like on point, and it did the thing. And was like, oh, phew, you just did that. But like conversations with Mark were kind of like that. Like it would get so far out sometimes that you're like, oh shit, is this just crazy? And then you're like, oh fuck, that actually worked.
That was
like,
a 64 beat measure. Oh man.
Yeah, so he would have some idea that he had been kind of grappling with, and then you in real time you'd see points come together. It wasn't just like always like there's something that he's thought about, and then he's adding a new element or something, or he's seen it a different way, and he's working it out in front of you. So you're just like watching somebody taking like leaps of faith, and then just like actually like having it land. Like it's just nuts.
Have you guys ever read that story by Stephen King called "The Ballad of the Flexible or the Rubber Bullet or the Flexible Bullet" or something? Anyways, when you read the story, by the end of the story, the guy has gone crazy, but the way that it's written, you go crazy with him. Like that's the way the Wrong Way Wizards work had always struck me. By the end of it, you know he's crazy, but you're right there with him. Like you know what the conversation, you don't know if he's messing with you or not. Like I always walk away from Mark's stuff wondering if he's just giggling at us.
Yeah, he's like the trickster who's like, I got you to go down there.
I would send it to somebody and they would read it and they're like, is this guy serious? Like, is this a joke?
Yeah. And
it was like, yes, but also yes. Like,
because it's so raw. It's so like the word smithing that he was able to do was far beyond the talent of any of us. And it was elegant. It was almost poetry to a certain, like when you were reading the passage that you just wrote, I couldn't help but just be in awe of how he puts his words together in a way that was far exceeding anybody else. But I think that was a little bit of the reason why he had so much friction, or why he pissed everybody else. I feel like some people were actually jealous of his talent.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I was. I don't know. I mean,
I definitely
writing is just really great. I mean, on another level. And just the stuff that he would put together, just like, is what for me really kind of changed my mind, like, or perspective. It was like he had he knew all the conspiracy stuff. He knew all the lore and all that stuff. But then he knew that there was more, and that you're always going to go far further. And he was interested in going further. He was always on the edge of whatever he was thinking about.
Yeah. That's the thing, like that Hunter S. Thompson quote about the only people who really know the edge are the people who have gone over it, and they don't usually come back to fucking tell you about it. Mark was kind of like one of those people who had been to the edge, and then he's actually going to tell you.
Yeah,
we were lucky that he came back. We were lucky he came back.
I know. See, that's the thing. We were having a conversation, and he was talking about the hanging thing, and I fucking said good, and he was like, "What?" Like as though I was saying it was good that he tried to hang him. I'm like, Mark, we're talking to you. That's like, it's good that you experienced what you experienced, and you're here to talk with us. I ended up having a near death experience shortly after that. I spent 5 days in the hospital with my stomach twisted after I ingested ayahuasca, and they told me I was within an hour of my life when I fucking hyperventilated on the hospital floor after purging for 20 hours straight. And it was like, I'm grateful for that experience that I'm on the other side of. I'm like, wow, that fucking happened. Jesus Christ. But yeah, I think that the veil was very thin for Mark. And it was almost like talking to him was like what I imagine it was like being around Peter Sellers after he went flatlined when he was doing Being There, because it's like he just came back for that film. And it's just like, I mean, I don't know how long of a timeline that was for Mark, but even if it was like the better part of his life. I mean, I don't know. What age was he when he went There's No Place Like Home?
56. He'll be 57. It would have been 57 next month. So quite young.
Oh, no, I mean his first incident. Yeah.
That was like, it was after 9/11. So it was like,
okay.
Some, I don't know.
Yeah.
40s.
So extrapolate. Like, let's see, 57. When was he born?
66.
He was born 66.
So what year? How old would he have been in 2001?
Oh, 35.
Yeah, 35.
420 months.
Fucking Alex, Jesus.
So
Is that how your math works now?
you say all this. You got all this, Alex?
That's how like mothers talk about he's 420 months.
I don't think any mother talks about their kids in 420 months. I don't think that's a thing at all. No.
When 900 months you reach, look as good you'll not.
Oh man, I don't know. So it kind of reminds me of like that movie.
Let's switch gears, Andreas. Like, dude, you told me about the suicide bombers in Star Wars one time, long ago. We had like a little bit of a discussion, but ever since then, like I denied it. I was like, nah, come on. That's like stretching it. But ever since then, every single Star Wars I watch has like a suicide bomber in it.
Yeah,
I do. What do you think the Phantom Menace was?
It's jihad, bro. Yeah, it's the whole deal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're rebels that are trying to destroy the Empire, and they're all about kamikaze. You know, originally Star Wars was supposed to star only Japanese people. Like he wanted only dwarves, and then he had he made a lot of compromises. Is the point before he got to Star Wars?
Compromise.
There's a lot of compromises in Star Wars, but I mean, you know, like the idea of Star Wars was going to be all Japanese, and yeah, there's a divine wind going on, the Force, and jihad tourism is not even a Disney aspect. However, if you get into it, what's it called, Rogue One? It's been a while since I watched
Rogue One.
It.
Definitely has
Rogue One's a jihad. It's jihadism. The whole thing is all about jihad, and I mean, they're trying to die. Also, which is the whole other thing.
The Force is with me. I am the Force. The Force is with me, and the guy just runs out there. It's all there. And I noticed
specifically suicide bombing, right?
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's predictive programming to an extent, and what was
weird
did
predictive programming come from? Because as far as I've tracked that down, that's not like that's like a conspiracy theorist idea.
No. It's not if you're talking about Bernaysian public relations.
But it's not in
actually
Bernays.
Documented. Sure it is. Predictive programming? Predictive programming you don't think is in Edward Bernays' main catalog of techniques?
If it's in there, I didn't
I remember Cord Meyer.
Yeah, I'm not saying he called it that.
If you guys don't watch Firing Line, which is like the conservative show that Bill Buckley made, right? He's a former CIA agent who had a book series called Black Eye. Get it? Anyway, he's a Catholic skull and bones. And in this interview, he talks with Cord Meyer. And Cord Meyer talks a lot about how the world works and how important it is to have predictive programming, because you need to gently guide people to know to trust in the right answer without having all the horrifying data. Right? Because all the data is terrifying. If you knew what was going on in Cambodia, it would frighten you. Right. If you knew what was going on in Afghanistan, it would frighten you. So the CIA has to keep that information from you. But what is their work? Synchronicity.
Tell me, elaborate.
I mean, you know, their job is to take all of the information that they can to understand all of the different dates and to figure out what's going on, what's going on with which government and which part of the world. If the Argentinians are very close or not very close with the Chilean government are likely to work with the Soviets. If the Soviets are likely to build a trade empire, I mean, these things all matter.
Right. So are you saying synchronicity is a causal by its definition from Jung?
Well,
so if we're saying because this is the thing, wherever you say the correlation may or may not equal causation, that becomes a question of that doesn't matter in synchronicity. But it does to them if they're going to justify
however,
I think
is basically like the word Smurf. It's whatever you want it to mean. Like people talk about sync as if it was predictive programming or whatever. So it means the same thing.
Well, I mean, Edward Bernays was able to figure out how there were. So it's not irrational. See, the thing is, there are very rational reasons that explain why people associate in their brains this memory with that memory, this emotion with that experience, this song with that day in their life. And if you can figure out how to program enough people, if you know that this many people in New York City read these 3 magazines, or
programming and predictive programming are 2 different things.
No. Here, check it out. Engineered consent. So he coined the term. Is a book that's really fucking hard to find. You can find one of his parts to it. There's like a short thing from him, but there's the book Engineered Consent. Look at the price of that online. If you can find a copy, it'll be like thousands of dollars. But anyway, Engineered Consent is, for all intents and purposes, what we would call predictive programming. And what he actually, his thesis that he argues there, I see it as pretty indistinguishable from even what like your average conspiracy theorist will argue. And so it's kind of a confessional, really. That's actually one of the things. I'm a little bit of an Edward Bernays sympathizer because I've heard him describe how shocked he was that people actually fell for what he was doing. Because when he was first asked to kind of stage those events, like get women to smoke with the freedom torches and all that kind of stuff, he didn't actually expect that the public would really run with it. And so he was just like, what? It's that easy? And so, like, I gotta say, like, and then they're like, and they're paying him incredible amounts, and they're just like, keep going, you know. And no wonder Freud hated him, but you know, whatever. I don't know.
God, this is amazing.
I mean, I think
I'm just going to read this really quickly, loudly for anybody to reiterate. The engineering of consent is the very essence of the democratic process, the freedom to persuade and suggest. I mean, it's hard to argue with that.
Once the initial situation is set up, I mean, we have run with the persuasion. We have just gone into a million different directions, like I was saying before. So this is exactly what we're talking about. But yes, there is a contingency of conspiracy theory that claims predictive programming on a billion things based off of motives that they put onto the elites that we can't prove.
Well,
case by case basis.
Like, why do you like bananas with your breakfast? I mean, that's like crazy how many people
that's
died
the real shit, though.
to make
that's
you love
psychology shit.
Yeah, well.
So Alex, I mean, this has a lot to do with like your point of view as far as Kubrick is concerned. That's why I was very curious on how, if you saw most of this as predictive programming, or I don't want to say like divinely inspired, but unconsciously. I don't know. I'm not sure where you're at, Alex.
Like I said, I'm in between. I'm sitting on the knife edge of indecision. I mean, it's
because there's
certainly a lot of. I mean, look, there's sync, so-called predictive programming in movies going back to the 30s, going back for a long time, and so this is sort of relevant actually to Mark because. Or what I was going to say is that with the whole QAnon thing, where I really strongly feel that whoever they are, the powers that be, the desk intelligence desk workers, guys,
their pronoun is
they. We're learning Sync. We're watching Sync, and they saw what we were all doing with our minds,
right,
and employed that, basically weaponized it to mind fuck boomers with Q,
right?
Because that's really all Q is just like training people to see, sort of do pattern recognition, and then from that a lot of crazy shit will come out because that's the way the world works. The way
it's basically the same thing they did to ISIS, pretty much.
Yeah,
you give them a tailor-made ideology, and then there's the chaos factor. So what happened there is people ended up believing it and then making it into their own, because they can customize it further to be whatever they want to be, which is what our secret societies, not so secret societies, do as well, which is what is documented in that Proofs of a Conspiracy book from the late 1700s, where it's just like, how did the Illuminati, the real Illuminati, the documented Illuminati, infiltrate Freemasonry? They said, we're the real Freemasonry, and they could recruit the people that they felt aligned with their beliefs kind of secretly and be like, oh yeah, no, we're the real inner circle, because the whole thing is made up in the first place anyway. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, where are the rules? Like, there's those written down.
Well, this kind of relates to, because I messaged Andreas last week about DuckTales, and this was before Mark died and everything, but it's sort of weirdly related because it ties together my research, Mark's research, and everything else that with regards to DuckTales. There's an episode of DuckTales called Time is Money, and it's actually a 5-part DuckTales movie that was aired, and it's all about like they time travel back to Egypt or something like that. But the reason I found it was because I like to do parent theses, right? On the date line. So I was going so we went from 9/11 to Oklahoma City bombing, right? Two big domestic terrorist events of the time. And so I wanted to see, it's 2,337 days between Oklahoma City and 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to see what came before that, on the same length of time. And so I learned that 2,337 days before Oklahoma City bombing was the day this DuckTales episode aired, called Time is Money. And in that thing, their time machine...
DuckTales always predicts everything.
It does. The time machine is called the Millennium Shortcut. And so...
Yeah, this has been attached to 9/11.
Yeah, I know. Jake Kotze had it in his video a long time ago. But
was it the same one? Was it the one where the safe hits the two towers? No, that was a comic that was foreign. That was like from somewhere else.
A comic. But well, it's got the Millennium Shortcut, and then I think they fly into a plane and disappear.
But it all had to do with the helicopters, the whirly twirly helicopter, birdie, whatever.
Yeah.
It's reminding me of that movie Millennium too, with Chris Christopherson. That's got some 9/11 predictive stuff in there.
That's
so
the airplane
Mark had
movie.
a big, one of his big essays, or one of his things, was about 9/11, and basically literally connecting that phrase "time is money" to 9/11 via through the fraction of 7/4, which is July 4th, etc. But he kind of pinpointed. He was doing a numerological analysis of all the 9/11 numbers. We all know 11, 77, 93, but then there's 175. Flight 175 was the tower, the second plane to hit the tower. It was the one that everybody saw that day. It was the money shot.
Oh, right.
So 7 divided by 4 is 1.75, which is the flight 175 that was the money shot. And then Pink Floyd,
yeah, there it is.
Put their song "Money" is in the time signature of 7/4, which is really rare time signature.
Well, wasn't it the first? No, I thought it's 8 count, right? Dun 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 dun, and there's an extra. There's an extra one in there. Okay, it's a 7/4. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, it's just, it feels that way because that's what the second is. But
I'm not a musician.
Yeah, I'm barely one. But so that just all in my head just exploded when I saw, okay, whoa, Oklahoma City to 9/11 to DuckTales Time is Money, is exact. That's crazy. No, but then you have to. But then that brings up the question of how intentional is that?
Right. Well, that's what's so cool about Scott Onstott, because Scott Onstott he does actually, excuse me, but a lot of what Mark did, except the difference is that Scott Onstott, almost no matter what, will ever come to any conclusion of anything. And he'll just entertain different possibilities. But he'll reach these points where it's he's measuring from site to site, the structure of the sites themselves. You're these were built by Masons, etc. That's not unreasonable. But then when he gets to he's looking at the length of the continent itself, which is subject to change. And he's finding these anomalous things that still apply just the same to the structures themselves and their relationships with each other. But then he's I don't know why that is. It just is. And so that accumulation of data, because it's I really feel Mark had been accumulating data for so long before we even knew him or knew Wrong Way Wizard, that when it got to that point, it was just
what sync was. I think
before we knew what it was,
doing it for a long time.
And it seemed like he had at a certain point reached certain conclusions, and that's when he wanted to come out of isolation and just go on this sharing streak. And so he went and he shared all of this stuff, but it's he had worked towards that, right? So it's we didn't see that experience of Mark's, but we could infer it. I mean,
Yeah, well, I think his whole thing was when his suicide attempt happened after he discovered sync by way of syncing up 2001 with Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Basically on a whim, and it blew his mind. And
but it wasn't. Wait, you said, but it was a different movie because he was unable to find the right movie, so he synced something up with
it was Wizard. They were gonna do the Wizard of Oz, Pink Floyd, but then they didn't have Wizard of Oz.
He
but
put
they
on
had
a Kubrick.
2001.
No, you have put on 2001
because he said they were the same movie. Yeah,
and he said he tried it with other things too, and then somebody tried to kill him.
Well, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he's speaking and he has weird ways of phrasing things, and then you start talking to him more about it, and you're like, oh, were you actually saying there? Yeah, that happened a lot.
Okay. So, have you guys ever heard of Schizotypal?
No, what's that? Never heard
So
of it.
it's part of schizophrenia, but I have a friend. I'm very proud to call him my friend, who used to be a friend of Philip K. Dick. And in a conversation I had with him, he mentioned that he thought that Philip K. Dick was being honest, and that he probably had a schizotypal personality. But the more that I investigated schizotypal personality, I'm pretty sure that most sync kids fall into this category.
Right. Well, I wonder what Dr. Kirby Surprise would have to say about that.
Well, one of the things that the reason I mentioned it right now is because it's very peculiar ways of communicating, like almost overwrought language or overly cryptic language. And another thing is very unusual style of dress, which every time I see a large group of sync heads together, it looks like a band of peacocks, man. It's just weird shit they're wearing.
It's just where, I'll always be a word man better than a bird man. No, strike that.
Look at Andreas's jacket right now.
Whatever. This was totally reasonable at one point in history. I'm pretty sure. I don't know what I'm a member of, but I'm the only member, I think, is the deal. God. All right. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll try to peacock less. No, I don't think so. But is that you think the problem is that we're calling things dysfunctions that are not dysfunctions?
Right. This is dangerous, because if you go to a psychiatrist,
more magical thinking is on your prognosis. If you have magical thinking, so if you're a wizard, you might be diagnosed as. So I mean,
hey man, I'm just making observations. Yeah, to me, what I think it means is like sync heads process information where like things have multiple meanings. So they have very symbolic dress and they talk in very symbolic ways.
Right.
So everything that they say has multiple meanings.
I say, look at this book right here, and I'll tell you what, this book right here, one of the problems with it is it talks about disorder. Instead of different ways things can function in a world that's environmentally shifting and things might be evolving in subtle ways. So this is the reason why they take kids and say, hey, you're not getting up early enough, so you have to take amphetamines. Oh, you're not focusing enough, so you have to take schizophrenic, atypical antipsychotics. Oh, you're not sleeping enough because the amphetamines, atypical antipsychotics, so you have to take suppressants at night. Oh, you know what? Maybe we need to stop making the kid fit into the freaking school, and we need to make the school fit into the freaking nature of reality.
Dude, I know a woman who fucking lost her I know a woman who lost her job at a school because she, during some meeting with like parents and everything, they were basically talking about Ritalin and how many children in the school were on Ritalin. And she was like, are we in agreement that generally speaking, for children, when they take this, it slows them down, and when adults take this, it speeds them up? And she was like, so why are we giving it to the children? Shouldn't we all be on the Ritalin so we can keep up with the kids? And she lost her job over that because she said it into a microphone or whatever. It was just like,
is this thing on? I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know, Andy, you've got kids though, right? Like, is that a thing you see a lot? Do you see like kids on amphetamines, like Adderall? Is that like this generation? It was ours.
I mean, it definitely was ours. I mean, I was put on Ritalin for a number of years, and when I took it, the only memories I have of it were, it's like coming down off a Coke, like just like eating yourself and paying too much attention to your eyes, like those kind of things. It didn't help me study any better by any means, but like, I'm homeschooling my kid, so
awesome.
I'm not, seeing large swabs of school kids like in the public, but he's in like martial arts and stuff. So I'm seeing a lot of definitely like ADD, but I see it more like we're kind of embracing it more, it seems, in the new kids, where we're giving these kids the benefit of the doubt more that it's probably the system that's controlling something that's natural rather than the other way around, And
there's a little shortage right now, right?
What's that? Different disorders seem to have different functions. But they're so it's more like mutants, in my opinion. Like there's certain individual, like perhaps a schizotypal individual would be what we would call a seer, have it been 300-400 years ago.
Bingo. Absolutely, man. Same with like autists and stuff like that. It's all kind of part of this same thing. And the thing is we just put these boxes around everything when there's no boxes. It's all spectrum, right?
Do you know what the most common symptoms of Adderall withdrawal are? Like if you've been taking Adderall and then you suddenly stop, it's rage. And so I thought that was pretty crazy when I saw that there's a national Adderall shortage. I read that there was a national Adderall shortage, and then I had somebody bump me on the freeway, and I don't know if there's a connection. There's a guy like screaming in his truck behind me while I'm going 70 and a 65. But like I know I'm in the passing lane, but it's right, Andreas, it's right before the fish hook. So I'm driving on. I'm like, what are you doing? And the guy just went completely ballistic, and he it was scary. Like he just he's going right up to me on the freeway, and he bumps my car. I was like, dude, you can't bump people's vehicles on the fucking freeway. and then I was like, is that the Adderall shortage? I don't know. Correlation doesn't equal causation. But
bro, we're getting close to we're getting real close to election, guys.
Well,
civil unrest imminent.
It's important to remember it's Santa Cruz also. Santa Cruz is a nuts place. And so it's funny because every once in a while Santa Cruz just becomes itself. You know what I mean?
right.
Like because a lot of times Santa Cruz tries really hard not to be. It just tries to be this like rich person place that they push everyone out, but it isn't, it's still this terrifying place. And it's violent and people die. And
they chose it for the Lost Boys. Why, Andreas? Do you know the answer why Santa Cruz was selected for the Lost Boys?
It was because of the serial killer capital the ratio of the world at that time. It was the most serial killers in one place.
Yeah. The year before or whatever. So they were looking at
contest. There's probably like 6 other great examples. Like Australia in the 70s and 80s was also had a serial killer.
I think they said the U.S. They were like it was the murder capital of the U.S. like the year before the Lost Boys or whatever. And so and then Jordan Peele chose it because of the Lost Boys for us. And we just had a crazy thing happen with that. Like I have on the website, I have Us with The Shining mirrored against itself with Saul Williams' Amethyst Rockstar. And so I watched it with Bill the other day. And then it was like, we looked up amethyst, and I didn't know that amethyst meant not intoxicated. That's like the meaning of amethyst. And people wore amethyst as like amulets to protect from intoxication when they fermented everything, And so like I was tripping out on that because there's like the whole thing in the movie is like, it's like Jack, he'd do anything for a drink, he even give his goddamn soul. And then like I'm listening to it with an album that at the same moment is talking about selling your soul if you want it, but that don't mean I'm going to buy it. Where it goes, the new wine is dying on the vine. How long must you age before you're ageless? What is it? Collective soul. Don't sell your soul. Collective soul, collective wealth. And then I'm looking up amethyst with Bill, and it turns out that like all of these mythologies, there's like one that there's like 50 mythologies that were written in like the 1500s, but then there's like one mythology that they're like inspired by that's actually an ancient Greek myth about amethyst becoming purple because of wine from tears. Is like, forget if it's Dionysus or it's tears from Bacchus or something, like dyed the amethyst that color. And so there's just it was so crazy because I'm like, oh, does this have any relevance? So like I paired it with Amethyst Rockstar before I noticed that in the movie that the kid kills somebody with a giant piece of amethyst. And if you look at the very last scene of the film Us, when she's like, which is filmed in Santa Cruz, by the way, which is what I was saying, but she looks at her kid and she there's like the understanding from the kid that he's like one of them from like the upside down, so to speak, from like below. And he's like holding the amethyst with a white rabbit. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like I paired it with Amethyst Rockstar, not realizing that actually amethyst is kind of subliminally central to us. Also, Jack Nicholson's grandson, Duke Nicholson, appears in that film and in the credits as Jack/Tony. So there's like they have the two names for like their others or whatever in the film that are like in the red jumpers with scissors or whatever. So it's like in that case they put oh no, it's not Jack. It's Tony/Danny or Danny/Tony. So I realized I've watched that movie so many times. It didn't strike me that how there was like some controversy around the way that woman spoke when she like does that thing with her voice where she goes, "We're Americans." That whole thing, dude. It's fucking Tony. She's doing Tony. Yeah. Did you know that, Alex?
I hadn't put that together.
I hadn't put it together either. It kind of blew my mind.
Know that with that movie, I think I've told you this before, but Jordan Peele's born. A certain amount. Well, okay, from Jordan Peele's birthday to the release of Us, the midpoint is the day Kubrick died.
There you go.
And
Crazy.
From each side, it's 7,320 days, which is a 237 reverse.
Right.
So perfect. Like
mind blowing.
What do you guys think about Dr. Sleep?
Hold on a second. I saw that movie Us and like wondering, well, because Get Out, like with Crypto K, we have this whole sort of puppet string theory that there's something working on humans as a puppeteer would, and that possibly all of these numerical dateline relationships have to do with that operation somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watch Us. Well, first of all, Get Out is a Being John Malkovich
sure
redux about
exactly. And Being John Malkovich was released 237 days after the death of Kubrick. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. And Catherine Keener's in it. And so then Us comes out, and I'm very interested to see what's it going to be. And then at the end, it's like the lady's like talking about they're using us as puppets. We are puppets. It's I was just like kind of amazed by that.
Yeah,
I just feel like. So Jordan Peele, do you think he knows that he released Us on the midpoint between his own birth and the birth of Stanley Kubrick or whatever that was that I just said?
It's doubtful, but that makes it all the more profound.
But I mean, you look at his
Carpenter
Peele stuff. Like he's got one that's I forget what it is. Well, it's a
Kubrick.
Nope. Parody or in The Shining or in Key and Peele. It's a sketch.
I don't know this.
He's doing the Kubrick stare. So he's obviously a huge Kubrick guy. As is seemingly every
he's a John Carpenter guy. That's his
John Carpenter's Synchie.
Well, that's
I am the Carpenter.
And I think John Carpenter honestly is a hyper underrated character in this. Like he honestly deserves to be kind of mentioned next to Kubrick. And I know that's crazy. That seems freaking crazy because it's like a video. It's like putting a video next to a film. But I'll tell you what,
Carpenter in everything I did because you could go any which way. I mean, Prince of Darkness,
Big Trouble in Little China,
Starman, you could go off on for
every one of them.
You could go off.
They Live, and of course, They Live is the thing.
Yeah, of course, I just did on my movie podcast. We just did They Live.
I think it's funny, dude. The way he talks about when people come up to him talking about They Live and like being like, oh, so like you're like and they have like these ideas of who it's really about. They're like, this is really about, and he's just like, dude, just no. He was like, this is mostly about Reaganomics, man. You don't know, that's what he says,
I actually contested that on my podcast recently. I was talking about that. While we were going through the movie, I was just literally knocking off one at a time.
Listen to it while I was at work.
How can you ever tell me this man actually believes that this movie is about fucking a very specific time in American history? Like, no.
Right.
Clear, like, there's too much. Every scene is so intentional.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, your talk was so good. I listened to your talk while I was at work. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. That was a great. And I like the way that as you went through it, you kind of did it for the most part, like kind of in order. So you're like, okay, now we're going here, and what happened there at the camp, and then here. Yeah, no, that was great.
Yeah, Conspiracy Theater 3000. We're gonna do a bunch of them. Cool. And we want to maybe have guests on eventually too. Like, so David, we'd love to have you on sometime because you'd rip one apart on if we did Kubrick or something. That'd be hilarious.
Down.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But Christopher Hunter Myers, Synchead, has actually got pictures of John Carpenter with a sync book.
How do I pull up Chris Myers' store too? I really want to.
Oh yeah, I actually just ordered a whole bunch of DVDs because I could not find them on any streaming network.
No, yeah, this guy's legit. I just don't remember what the name of his store is right off the top.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. It's Retro Station Baltimore. Retro Station Baltimore, where you can get.
Just like I know, like half of you aren't in Baltimore, and because there's a big world out there, but he ships online. Yeah, and so he's basically like the Clerks movie, real life though, kind of guy, and super rad. And so I was looking for cassette tapes for my dad, and he's like, "Oh yeah, well, it's funny. I just got rid of all the cassette tapes recently. A lot of people stopped doing cassette tapes, but I'll find you some." And he can, and he did.
He does.
So rad guy. Yeah,
we're talking about Synchead, Christopher Myers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Christopher
Dude,
Hunter
that guy tripped me the fuck out when
He's so rad.
I first did a 42 minutes. The first time I was ever on 42 minutes before Always Record was a thing, and we did it on the what was it called? Talk Shoe, where you'd sign in or whatever, and there was like people could leave like comments during the talk, and I didn't see them until after it was over, and like I looked at it and it was like Chris Myers, the whole conversation was giving a detailed explanation for how to sacrifice a cat and make a wish. And it was so specific. It creeped me out. Like if it was just something kind of like catty or whatever, like I would have been like whatever. But oh my God, it was like a detailed description of how to skin it, all the steps involved. He's really something, man.
Yeah, he's one of those individuals in sync who is very
You're looking for
influential.
any random weird movie you've ever seen, any album or music thing you've ever found. I'm just saying, like, go through Chris, go through Baltimore Retro Station.
He's great though. I shouldn't present that. Like that was just another level of sense of humor. Is what I'm saying.
The librarian of thought, when you have every possible piece of knowledge at your disposal.
Ooh,
that's the craziest thing. It's like the kid with all the videotape library. You know. But I don't know. So do you think that I remember thinking the same thing about the American Pie song. The guy who wrote the American Pie song was like, no, it's not really about anything.
Don Henry, what is his name? Don McLean?
Don McLean, yeah. Don McLean. He's like, no, it's not about anything. Don't worry. It's just kind of adorable.
Oh, dude, can we go through it? I would fucking love to talk about American Pie. Are you guys? Because, like, seriously, like, American Pie is just so, it's like about the British invasion. It's about like look at the fucking specifics and why it's called American Pie, dude. It's talking, it establishes our movement. You should pull up the lyrics, so it establishes like what the people were doing. We're the players, right? So like skip ahead. It's like when the players try to take the field, the marching band refused to yield. Who's the marching band? It's the fucking Beatles. And so it's this whole thing that they're like, the jester play
Bob Dylan.
Yeah, so it's talking about Bob Dylan, and it's talking about the king that he took the coat from fucking from Elvis Presley, and then he's fucking playing this part, but it's like he sang for us. So like they used to say, there's like Beatles people and there's Bob Dylan people. When the Beatles showed up, it was just like everyone changed their haircuts in like 2 weeks. It was just like, and everyone acted like they always knew who the fucking Beatles were, and it was like, dude, it was like, so we had Meet the Beatles come out after With the Beatles, and there was only like one fucking album, and everyone was talking like they fucking were like, oh yeah, you don't know the Beatles, but anyways, yeah. So there's this whole thing, and then
people, but they drafted all of them.
Right, and then it talks about Altamont, and it's like it's talking about the Jack Flash jumped on a candlestick. Like we're playing jumping Jack. No, they were playing Sympathy for the Devil when the stabbing happened at Altamont. So it's like no angel born in hell could break that Satan spell and all that stuff. Like it's about this. I swear, dude. It's like how the Beatles' White Album ended with a lullaby. It's like these people basically hijacked the movement. I'm not saying that this is ultimately what it is. I'm saying this is what the song seems to convey, is that basically we had a movement going, and then fucking the British showed up, and we're like, what happened to our whole revolution, man? And then he like basically blames these English bands. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the British invasion, right? Exactly. And what's weird is it kind of it's the British invasion begins it and ends it, and he's like, have we always been kind of a slave to this and the crashing of the crickets? Now, I feel like the weirdest thing that reiterates this point is Weird Al, and like I'm gonna allow it because of the fact that it's synchronicity.
Oh my God.
But if you remember, I know, like, but
no,
if you think about
real,
how he did, what the synchronicity is, and how the story is told, like, and why he chose the episode 1 destruction of the star. Like, what is Star Wars about itself? Right? Star Wars is about the same, like the next continuation of that period, the Soviet and American crisis, the destruction of the old order and the American industrial military monopoly that took over the world, this globalistic period. And it is the Empire and the Star Wars and everything. So it's ironic because it's Clear Channel, of course. Yeah. And
oh yeah, no, weird Liber Al should not be excluded from the SyncNet for real. Like in all ton of cases actually. And I totally see what you're saying. It's like by what does he say? This here Anakin guy, maybe Vader someday later. Now he's just a small fry. Soon you're going to be a Jedi.
And kissed his mommy goodbye, and he said, "Soon I'm going to be a Jedi."
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm curious how much time Don McLean spent in Laurel Canyon. Talking about the British coming in and ruining everything.
Yeah, there's not another good song on that album, dude.
is about how American music is too wordy.
It is a wordy song. So you're saying it's a parody of itself? Maybe.
Oh, kinda. Fuck, man. How many verses are in that thing?
There's a
You know,
lot.
yeah, but you know the news when they say that the Big Bopper and Richie Valens and who's it, Buddy Holly, they all died in that plane accident. So that's how it starts out. That's the news that he reads. And the thing of like, I went down to the corner to the Sacred Store to hear the music. Like the man said the music wouldn't play because they stopped fucking playing. Like you used to be able to just have booths where you'd listen to the records before you'd buy them. And so like at a certain point they like remove that. So it's saying, yeah, the day the music died because these people died, but it's also like the spirit of what the corner store was, the Sacred Store was, you know, it's I don't know. It's like the American spirit is just being crushed, you know. That's what the song's about.
Christopher Hunter Myers is
it's really hard, yeah, when you get into the Buddy Holly thing, because what went on at that time was there were a bunch of bands that had been, before radio had become the mainstay, people had records and you bought a record and it cost money, but you could pay for the whole band, you know, and so you'd have choirs and orchestras and things like that, bigger bands that could be recorded, or you'd pay for them to be in an engagement, or they'd be at a bar all day and they get some of the money as the bar gets more people coming in, however they would do it. Instead, all of a sudden you can just copy music and play it on the radio, and some bands said, no, we don't want our music played on the radio, you know, and then the radio said, fine, we'll get people who do want their music played on the radio. And that's kind of like Napster. That's kind of like what happened in our lifetime. People went from getting paid great amounts of money and then to not get the same amount of money. But it all kind of happened around the crickets. And there were people that were trying to figure out how could they control this new music that these kids were kind of interested in, that they were moving away from, because at first they were getting the lower demographics, like we're getting black people to make music and saying, hey, yeah, you want your music played on the radio? We won't pay you very well, but you can get your music on the radio. And they tricked a lot of people into getting exploited. And then Buddy Holly was trying to come up with another alternative and work with other radio stations. And so that's the one of the stories, is that they were trying to remove anybody in their way.
Oh, are you suggesting that there's a conspiracy theory that plane was taken out because he was loose cannon in that? I never heard that before.
What's that beginning of the movie Josie and the Pussycats, right? So if you watch the Josie Pussycats movie, what's the name of the band? Du jour, because it means of the day, right? And so du jour, we're du jour, you know, and du jour means for life. Du jour means forever. Du jour, and Target sponsorship, right? And eventually they find out that the 8-track recorder, or the 24-track recorder they're using, is putting in subliminal messaging that makes you want to shop. And so the guy just jumps out of the plane and they crash the plane and kill du jour, right?
So is that what happened? Is that what Buddy Holly tried to
I feel like that's what the Josie and the Pussycats movie is insinuating. Maybe there's another
related
one.
to how they stopped Elvis too. They kind of shut him down.
Yeah, though that's an interesting one. So I recently did see that movie. You saw that movie, Elvis?
Yeah.
Movie 2022.
Really
What's it called?
good.
Oh, yeah, guys, let's talk about Celebrity Death Pool 2023. Every time there's a Deadpool movie, a whole shit ton of actors die. But they're filming Deadpool 3 this year.
Oh God, I'm scared.
And there has been, so we were talking about the Elvis movie popping big, and
Priscilla Presley.
Lisa Marie died.
Lisa Marie, not her mom.
Lisa Marie died it was 2,370 weeks since Elvis died. It was in the middle of it. And then the exact one, I had a tweet about this, but that there was a professional wrestler named Jay Briscoe who died tragically in a head-on car collision.
Look up the I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Well, just the last thing is that this guy, Jay Briscoe, who died 2,370 weeks after Elvis died, was actually born exactly 666 months after Kubrick, which is just so weird.
Every time. I had a weird one. I don't know if anyone's like 90210 with the Luke Perry and everything, but he died
son's a
on
professional wrestler too, by the way. Luke Perry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Jungle Boy.
That's interesting. Yeah, so there we go. Any syncs you've got, I'm interested in. Because I saw it, like, so there's a show called Everwood, and Everwood's freaking weird because basically it's like this demented version. It's the Twin Peaks equivalent of Archie, the Archie comic book. And so all the characters' names are basically the Archie characters and everything like that.
Wasn't that Riverdale too?
Am I saying it wrong? Is that what it is? Is it Riverdale, not Everwood?
Yeah, Riverdale. I was going to say.
Riverdale.
Yeah.
I think you could just mixing them up. Yeah.
I'm mixing them up. Okay, Riverdale. So here's what the heck? I'm sorry. And also, what the heck? This show is weird. But the idea of a show that was about Archie Bunker. I'm not Archie Bunker. All right, I'm going to stop right now because I'm getting synchronicity. And that's not what we're trying to get to. But Luke Perry, he died on the Super Bowl, the Superb Owl, the year after the Philip Seymour Hoffman died on the Superb Owl. And they've been doing this. It seems like this is like a sacrificial time of year. What do you think about this? That is there a thing that happens on the Super Bowl?
Oh yeah, and I would suggest that nobody post during the Super Bowl this year. If you're a conspiracy conspiracy theorist, do not post anything that happens on the Super Bowl this year.
57
because
this year?
we all know. We all know.
I don't know.
I don't know about this, though. I want to challenge this idea that sync kills people. I think that sync is the wiring under the board, and we can see, how things are connected. But I don't. If it's a causal, I don't see it as causal. Thank you. Sync doesn't kill people. Yeah, people do.
You don't think synchronicity kills people?
I don't think synchronicity kills people. No.
Well,
okay.
Well.
Because it's a matter of cause and effect. Where is your vantage point that you're going to look at that from? So, like, if you're saying that you're looking at something that's below the surface, it's like, I don't know.
I had a pretty intense thing. I don't think I've ever shared in public, but when my dad died, he died on September 11th, 2016, and he had cancer for like 9 months. And so I knew he was sick. I knew he was going to die. But I was doing this CryptoK research, and I basically, long story short, I pinpointed September 11th, 2016 as being, and the whole week before that, actually, as being really something like, I sent it in an email. I said, is that going to be the day my dad dies?
Mm-hmm.
And this was like in June. And lo and behold, it was.
Right. So you saw it.
That happened.
You didn't cause the thing to happen because it's it's in a causal principle. Like I don't know, man. Like I used to think just the opposite, and then this makes more sense to me. Although, like with most things, I would say that there's like a combination, But at the same time, with this, I'm like, we're talking about like something that's distinct but not separate, sure. But which comes first? Like that's the real question. Like what stands before what?
Sometimes I have a paranoid state of mind where I connect the fact that I started doing this CryptoK research and I actually published it on my blog, and then 5 months later, all of a sudden, my dad gets diagnosed with cancer. Mm-hmm. And so in my head, I'm like, well, if I hadn't published anything, would that have happened?
Is this your fault?
Am I being targeted by people in the future? That's the sort of mindset.
I think it's different to be able to see things than to be able to move things with your mind. And maybe there's certain circumstances where you can do both, but they're different kinds of things. If you're acknowledging that someone is having a part of a trajectory, you're seeing this path, you're seeing things moving by, you can see kind of where they're going. It's like being able to differentiate an excess wind chill factor or something. He's moving and you can't stop him, but you know where he's moving to. That's different.
James Hillman wrote a book called The Soul's Code, and it's an understanding that the entire life of someone is an actual image. Like the soul is aware of what is going to happen at the end of its life, in the beginning of its life. So he talks about individuals who are like initially shy when they're very young, and hide behind their mom's red apron, end up to be matadors later in life and things of that nature. Like there's a code that the soul of an individual will display in the individual's life over the individual's life, because it is already aware because we think as far as like time is concerned, we're linear. However, the life of an individual is extremely short compared to a bigger timeline. So the idea is that the life is almost instantaneous, if that makes sense. Like,
dude, as soon as you said James Hillman, I thought you were gonna drop about the dream in the underworld and show how that relates. Because have you read that book, The Dream in the Underworld by James Hillman?
No, I've read a lot about Hillman, but not that particular book. I've read a lot about him, and I've read Soul's Code and a few other things, but like I remember there's a book like this thick just on him. Yeah. And the reason why he's important to sync work is because he was doing the same thing. There's a story about him coming out of Elvis in particular and him going, "Oh my God, it's Dionysus. Why can't anybody say that it's Dionysus?"
Right. So, well, he was a successor of Jung, right? He actually studied with Jung.
Campbell more in particular. In fact, I think Hillman took over the Joseph Campbell Institute after Campbell's death. I could be wrong, but it's a lot of that Jungian idea of archetypes that carry through from Campbell and Jung. So, but the idea that our lives, like, I mean, how many artists in the chat or in we're talking to now have done things and then afterwards realized that what they did and they thought was random actually had meaning or some archetypal.
Right. There's also places where there's just too much context that you could never explain fast enough to people so that they could actually understand it. So like Alex sharing a personal experience with your father, you know, like, I mean, I had a thing happen where Patrick Sveck and I were working on an extensive blog, the most extensive blog I'd ever done with another individual on Heather O'Rourke. And we were just looking at like the high weirdness surrounding Poltergeist and ET and just like all of this stuff. And as it was like reaching a point where it's like, this is just an absolute mindfuck on its own, just the thing in itself. At work, there's a little girl who's the oldest of the little girls that hung out in the courtyard at the Tannery Art Center where I did printing and stuff and framing. And this little girl was raped and murdered. She was 8 years old, same age as Heather O'Rourke. I was super close with her mom. It was like one of the most devastating things that's ever rocked my fucking community, and the way everything happened. And it was a young guy who did it. I think, what was he, 13 or something? Yeah. And just horrific, gnarly shit, right? And like, but then she had this whole thing where she used to howl like a wolf. And it was just her thing. And so at a certain point after she died, the whole community everywhere at a certain time, they all started howling. So you could just hear people around the neighborhood howling for her at whatever time. And her mother was actually offered that they said they wanted to build a statue of her at the courthouse, behind the courthouse. And if she'd allow it, and she was like, I think that's feels creepy to me to have a statue of my daughter for, you know, whatever cause they were relating it to, you know. And she said, but if you wanted to put a wolf there, a statue of a wolf with a little plaque that explains or whatever, she's like, I'd love that. And then they didn't pursue it further. But as I was working on this thing, I was realizing that Poltergeist was largely inspired by a Twilight Zone called Little Girl Lost. And it's almost verbatim. Like if you watch that episode, it's like fucking totally uncanny what happens there with the little girl disappearing. They can't find her. They go into another dimension to retrieve her. It's like the same fucking story. But Little Girl Lost, that episode is named after the William Blake poem Little Girl Lost, which is about a girl named Laika. And Laika, if you look it up from its etymological meaning, origin, whatever, it means wolf. The little girl's name is Wolf. And this is the girl that's the basis for this whole thing that I'm relating with the situation. It was just these are just like, you know, still like as crazy as it is, tip of the iceberg stuff. There's just so much context. It's one of the reasons why things didn't work out that well for the integration of Jewish people in, say, Poland, is that there's on one level a fascination and an interest because something is different than what people are used to, and they try and like understand it, but then there's so much context that you could never possibly explain unless if you're like raised in it, you know, and even then it's hard enough. So it's like, and it's that problem where it's like there's so much to explain here, I couldn't begin. I'm sure Mark dealt with that all the time, where it's like you're trying to communicate something, but it's like, look, I'd have to give you a fucking book for you to get how this is all related and what it is that I'm speaking to, you know? And sometimes like I avoid like the personal stuff like that, like even like just relating with sync. Like what I love about media is I can just let that be an objective on its own. And just, you know, like it's the point at which people start to be concerned about people psychologically is like, if you're relating to synchronicity in media, that's one thing. It's kind of nerdy. If you're looking at synchronicity in your own life and drawing significance from it, especially if it's dictating your actions in any way, that's when you'll scare people, and maybe sometimes rightfully so.
Well, I kind of use what Jung said about like private and public. So there's like private sync and there's public sync, so to speak.
Yes.
There's like something that happens from your point of view, but there's also like you were just showing pictures from E.T. The movie poster for E.T. is 120% related to the Sistine Chapel's fingers of God touching. And there's so many things that happen inside of E.T. that are like undeniably like, well, I'm talking about the two fingers touching with Elliot, and that's God touching the finger of Adam, right? And then that's intentional. I don't know if that's sync, like
right. Absolutely.
And then of course,
because then also that speaks to a really grand psyop of upgrading the gods and angels thing to aliens and interdimensional extraterrestrials.
Absolutely.
Like
well, there's more too. I mean, like when he comes out, I mean, he comes back to life, and his heart glows like Jesus. But also, when the spaceship leaves a rainbow in the sky, it's basically the covenant of God in Noah.
You know that while that happens, they play the drum roll from Thus Spake Zarathustra, right?
No.
Yes,
they do. Yeah.
So I mean,
and then at the end of Poltergeist, as they're going along the upper level of the motel, the last door that you see is 217. So Poltergeist and ET are their sets overlap. They're filmed at the same time. They're both overseen by Steven Spielberg, even though they'd say Tobe Hooper did Poltergeist on its own. It's Steven Spielberg's all over it. Like that scene where the guy's ripping his own face off in the mirror or whatever, that's Spielberg's hands. Like he is all up in that, right? And you can see it because if you watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then you watch what was the one after that? It's actually a reference of something that gets said in Poltergeist. What's Tobe Hooper's next movie after Poltergeist? Do you guys remember?
Life Force.
Life Force. Thank you, because she says it's after her life force. That's what she says. The Beast is after with Carol Ann. And so it's like if you start looking for the correspondences between Poltergeist and E.T., they're like endless. The movies are like the same length. Like it's just it's
well, even Close Encounters. The idea like it's basically revelations, and so I wonder if it's just Steven Spielberg trying to use the unconscious of the American people as like some cash cow, or if it is some sort of like predictive programming.
You read the Crispin Glover essay, I assume, about Spielberg and
he claimed he was a pedophile. It's hard to
Well, that's part of the whole thing because the whole discussion of like sync and predictive programming or whatnot, like because obviously Spielberg in all of his movies is like fixated on childhood and children and his own childhood.
Right. Have you seen the most recent one?
Yeah, I saw it.
Fableman.
Did you notice the thing with the closet? So check it out. Like that's one of the connection points between E.T. and Poltergeist. They hide E.T. in the closet. Carol Ann disappears in the closet. Both movies are very much centered around the closet. And then in the new Spielberg movie, it shows him watching his movies in the closet, so he could watch them during the daytime.
Well, not only that, that's where he shows his mother the footage that he's captured.
That footage.
Capturing her in her cuckolding love affair with her best friend, which is such a weird
right. I don't know if it's cuckolding because the other dude wasn't into it, but yes, I know for all intents and purposes.
I couldn't watch BFG because it almost made me puke. Like the pedophilia overtones or undertones or however you would say it in BFG are disturbing.
You know that was Joe Alexander's video that he never fucking released, that I actually feel partly responsible for him not releasing it. And I tried to tell him, no, dude, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Because I was like, he showed me this video that was all about Back to the Future and pedophilia and Kabbalah. at the same time
seen
because
that.
he was relating. Yeah, you've seen that. Yeah.
These days, Rick and Morty is all into that. So,
he never officially released that video, which I actually sorry, Joe, but I feel like that was kind of a mistake, and I feel partly responsible because I was like, oh no, you can't do that, and I'm like, no, I was just being shock value. Like that was a great video. But,
dude, you're just showing that image of BFG right there. Yeah, that made me think of the guy from Family Guy, and then you hopped over to Rick and Morty, and it was uncanny.
Roald Dahl, the guy who actually,
I do see
Roald
it.
Dahl
I do see
was
the
like
old
is intelligence, by the way. Roald Dahl, the guy who he was part of British intelligence.
No shit.
Yeah, and Netflix just bought him because he did a bunch of crazy stuff about children making cannibalism cookies, and which is very Soylent Green as well.
His daughter died very young to measles, allegedly, and so he's kind of trotted out for pro-vaccine arguments. Like if somebody will often link you to read this essay by Roald Dahl if you don't believe in vaccines. Like so it's like he's part of that agenda as well. So the connection between him and Spielberg is okay, there's weird stuff with children with both these guys.
Yeah, dude, do you know that interview with? So I found the interview and I typed it all out because every time I would look for it online, they'd cut parts of it out when it's just like transcript. But there's an interview with Steven Spielberg where he talks about Kubrick sending him the fax machine thing. So he wanted to communicate through I guess what would you say, encrypted line, so to speak, even though it's not digital, it's before that, but whatever, like a protected line because he didn't want anybody listening in. And Spielberg's going off about how he called Hollywood Sin City, said he didn't want to come anywhere near it, and then he still wanted to communicate with Spielberg, always asked him why he still lived there, and then he's just like, we went, and Spielberg describes it as he felt like he was doing this kind of CIA thing with Kubrick, where it was he would be messaging him faxes in the middle of the night. And his wife, Spielberg's wife, got really annoyed by it. Was and he finally unplugged the thing or whatever. But the way he talks about it is just eye rolling. He was he didn't take it seriously. He didn't take it, and it's dude, Kubrick understood that the way things were going. When he was asked about the computers being left on, he's they like to stay on, and his whole attitude around that. It's he was hip to something. And Spielberg just, oh my God, he just feels like the epitome of what it's I've had friends like that. You know what I mean? Friends where you're we do not align in terms of our ethics and our ideas about fucking everything. What's that? I'm sorry.
Kayla said, what about Chronicles of Narnia in the closet? It's it's not a closet, it's a wardrobe. I think don't mix up your Jungian archetypes with your allegories.
I need to look at the comments.
The door.
But
it's little kids who mature inside that wardrobe.
Firestarter was good. I don't know. Do you guys want to get canceled? I don't mind. If I have a week off, it's fine. So if you guys want to talk about Heather O'Rourke, I don't mind. Really, do it. Go for it. Fine. Anything you want to say? You guys have opinions? I mean, is anybody this is the big one, right?
I'm scared of that whole situation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so super, Al. Go ahead.
I have a segment of it, and sorry, Cassandra, that's pretty long and thorough. But yeah, so it's ultimate high weirdness. I think we've discussed it on the show, even some of the stuff
I don't think we've gone that deep into
Whoa, tomorrow is her death day.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, really?
Yeah, February 1st.
Dude, come on. You have to have synchronicity abound.
That's 35 years, 420.
So here's some of the bigger high weirdness things with Heather. So one of the things is that there's a poster above the children's bed in Poltergeist that is for a Super Bowl that hasn't happened yet. And so it has the year, and it's why is there? And so she actually her intestine twisted. And she went septic, so she had a digestive issue, and so 1988, right? So she got sick during the game when that actually happened years later, and she died on the way to the hospital. And that actually when the game actually took place, it was Colorado versus San Diego, where she was and where she was from, and so Colorado, of course, is The Shining. We have the spirit comes out of the TV when it reads 237 in Poltergeist. It's built on a graveyard. They said they had to, you know, like they're like, relax, it's not ancient Indian burial ground we're talking about here. It's just a couple houses. The Shining, it is ancient Indian burial ground that it's buried on. They had to fight off several Indian attacks while building it. You know, it's like, and so I see the whole thing with Poltergeist and The Shining as conveying that when you build something on top of something, you know, negative, that what or whatever it is, that thing that you built on top of integrates itself into the next thing, so that it's like when you try and repress something and it just finds a way of coming through. And so The Shining and Poltergeist seem like it's like a statement on like America being built upon bloodshed, and that, you know, blood in the streets in the town of New Haven, blood stains the roofs of the palm trees of Venice. You know, it's like you can't escape what was there.
It's a haunting, so it's like it's a possession. America is possessed. It is it's both possessed and is haunted by. So it's not just like built on, but it is actively haunted by.
Right.
Terrestrial, which is sort of Peter Levenda's whole deal about.
That's true.
Well,
who I would love
John
to fucking
Keel.
talk to, by the way. Can we do a thing, Alex and Andreas and anyone else, like where we get talk to Peter Levenda, or I'll discuss that off air.
He's the one. You'd have to, I don't know if he's
That remake with Star Wars there. That's so weird.
Okay, so the little girl in this
Sam Rockwell connections.
I'm sorry. So,
No, let's make some Sam Rockwell connections.
the girl in the remake of Poltergeist is named Madison, and they call her Maddie for short.
Whole episode for Sam Rockwell, actually.
That was Maddie was the name of the girl who was killed at the Tannery Art Center. So that in the remake that came out the same year that Maddie died, she has the same name. I'm sorry, another personal sync, but yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
I don't know. I just so that does. Is there something actually? By the way, did you were thinking about Sam Rockwell?
No, but I mean, we're talking Kubrick and all this stuff. It's just I'm thinking of the movie Moon and like what that movie was all about.
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Yeah, that's the first one that came to my mind. Yeah, with Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore and written by Charlie Kaufman.
Did most people in Hollywood. Yeah, I'd like to know more.
About a guy who works for the CIA.
Yeah, maybe we could do an episode on him.
Oh yeah, no, that's super interesting. What was his name? Chuck Berry? No,
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell's character, the guy, Chuck Barris. Thank you. That did the Gong Show and that one song, Palisades Park.
The Gong Show movie actually released the same day as The Shining.
What?
Which is crazy. Yeah,
that is crazy. And so the next day was Pac-Man, or was that the day before?
I think it was I don't know. It was the day after.
I think it was the day after. Both Pac-Man and The Shining, a maze, running from ghosts, same basic elements.
And the day before.
Oh, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who also died the year before Luke Perry on Superb Owl. Interesting guy, made a movie right before it about the Grand Master. I think it's an L. Ron Hubbard kind of allegory, it seemed like.
Oh, the Master, yeah, of course.
Did you think that was about Scientology? I don't know. I was just asking.
Dude, what is up with that one interview where he freaks out? Who did that? That was Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson did The Master. Am I correct in that? Yeah. Okay, so there's an interview with him where somebody asked him directly about the Scientology element, and he gets pissed off. He's like, "We're not talking about that." He was just like.
Well, somebody told me one time that just kind of matter-of-factly that Philip Seymour Hoffman was murdered by Scientology as punishment to Paul Thomas Anderson for making that film.
Well,
he's like it was about Edgar Casey. What's your problem?
I'm glad you told us that you heard that, and we don't know what that is. But yeah, I mean, so it is interesting that they said we'll be looking for the sticky bandits who left the heroin with the black spades marked on them. Like, so he's getting heroin marked with these little black spades on the containers, and so we'll be trying to figure out where they came from. Which really, it felt like the sticky bandits from Home Alone. You know, that they're like we're going to find the drug dealers, but who are these people with the black spade?
Weren't they the wet bandits?
Yeah, the wet bandits.
Well,
see the sticky bandits.
Well, that was bandits is Home Alone 2 when they Home Alone Lost in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, wet bandits.
You're nobody unless
someone didn't Seymour Hoffman do that weird sync movie about New York.
See, it's not just a Mandela effect.
Thank you, Andreas. Yeah, let's see. I'm not as hip to the New York one.
Oh, you got to see it. David.
I mean, I've seen the fucking movie. I'm just like, I don't remember it like that. Yeah. But
also by Charlie Kaufman, who wrote it.
Yeah. Are we looking at the subliminal synchrosphere? So you should go to that blog spot that does it say the whole blog has been removed?
You're gonna have to find the
yeah, see if
it's been removed,
that's so crazy. So that was earlier in this conversation. I totally just, as a point of reference in relating Mark LeClaire removing his own blog to subliminal synchrosphere and saying, well, at least that's up, or what I said. I mentioned that it was up, and then you go to it and it's gone. Is subliminal synchrosphere gone, or is it just this post? I wonder. You should look that up.
This is a cached image on DuckDuckGo, and if I click on it, it's not there. Site has been removed.
The blog has been removed.
But Alex might be able to find it because he's good at going on the Wayback Machine. And anybody who wants to look for things like that, you can go to archive.org, which will take you to the Wayback Machine. And then
Subliminal Synchrosphere is one of the best blogs I've ever seen on the internet, by the way.
Boo. The guy who brings back blogs, everybody. Can we just do it? Can we start blogging again, please?
Well, this is kind of like that. Yes,
but nobody would read them. Nobody would read them.
I feel like we gotta do. If you write them and you want to read them to us once a week, I'm down to have like a go deep dive. Seriously, like going into a YouTube video where we can do PowerPoint lectures on stuff. Like that's the best way to get people to look at research. At this point,
I just don't like the way the internet has gone into this. You're on Twitter or you're on Instagram. It's like
you can record all the cassette tapes, and it'll be cool.
You can do the same thing on Twitter though.
I got a random. You can, and if you connect your Twitter to YouTube, you're doing fine. Like there's like 223 people watching right here. That's pretty close to a synchronistic number. I'm just saying, 4 more people.
Like to read,
and then you know what happens.
It's not conducive at all to long form stuff, even though people do it.
Right.
I don't know,
because at the end you always have to. People do an unroll, to actually read it on one page. And it's just like, why not just post it on one page?
If you did a video and, also you can send me the words and I can put it out like read to people. I think Books on Tape, Reality, that's where we live, with like some pictures for people. I did want to say that when we talked about Santa Cruz being the serial killer capital of the world, like what jumped into my mind was Adelaide. I'm sorry, I keep doing this where I type the wrong thing. Adelaide, Australia. There it is. So basically, they say that they're not. But if you type in Adelaide serial killer, you'll be like, serial killer capital? Why can't we bury the myth in all these like articles? No, calm down, like calm.
Well, did they have it 1 year and then they just got stuck with that? Because that's what they say. Like with Santa Cruz, it was like, no, we had 1 year where it was like it's particularly bad. But,
they had it in the 70s and through the 90s, and apparently 100 years earlier, like there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening, and a bunch of people go there because they're interested in it, and they're like, dude, stop, don't talk about it. And people in Australia are like, they're trying to hide this whole idea and say, no, it actually wasn't that big of a deal. But if you go back, it seems like a poltergeist thing where they killed a bunch of locals. And so
we had sacrifices in the Pogonip where people had their blood drained. And that was fucking going on, after the year 2000. I don't know exactly, but they'd have tourist season, and they wouldn't want that to be on the front page of the papers. But you could find it; it was in the papers. It was just like not, in places where it was, easily found. Like you had to dig into it,
After the personals, they're like, if you're bored. But if you look into this bay, Adelaide, it's kind of like Santa Cruz. If you it's not exactly, you've got this idea. It's like a bay. And then into this area, and this reminded me of this other story, this movie, Frog Dreamin'. You ever see that movie? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It sounds familiar. What the fuck? Yes. Oh my God. You're taking me back. Okay.
And this kid, right? Like he's in that other movie. You know what I'm talking about?
Flight of the Navigator? Or no?
Yeah.
Oh.
No.
He's in Flight. No?
E.T.
No.
Is he?
He's E.T.
I do not think he's in Flight of the Navigator.
He's in E.T. He's the E.T. kid, right?
Oh, it's Henry Thomas?
I don't think that's Henry Thomas. I recognize he was in like what is the with the little robot boy?
Starring Henry Thomas.
Daryl?
Is that here in town? That is Henry
Thomas. Yeah. So Henry Thomas in E.T. His other movie is Frog Dreamin', right? Okay. I don't know. Is he not in Flight of the Navigator? What's the other one?
No, different kid.
I think he was in Flight of the Navigator.
No, but
he's in Gangs of New York. He's in Gangs of New York, which is pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, Henry Thomas is also in Suicide Kings, which
Suicide Kings is a wonderful movie.
It is. It's actually really terrible in certain ways. It seems contrived, but the way that they did that is it's part comedy. Is the way I reconcile it. You have to laugh.
So
it is part
in
comedy.
this,
You got Dennis Miller. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
in this Frog Dreaming, which I think apparently has another name in Australia or something. Like I think in Britain it's called The Quest or something weird. Like
I have a VHS of it with as it called the Quest.
The Quest. Okay,
Is that the one with all the frogs? Like,
yeah, Frog Dreaming's a way cooler name. If it was called The Quest as a kid, I probably wouldn't have watched it.
Oh wait, is this the one where he makes like the
Australian
apparatus? Like there's a machine, isn't that the?
So yeah, it's way weirder than anything I remembered. When I finally rewatched it, I was like, wait, that's what this is about? So basically what it is there are these machines that have been infested with the spirit of these aboriginal demons, but they're basically just old mining machines that have sunk underneath the swamp. Yeah. And it's so confusing whether it's Tartarian, like are these ancient machines or not, because are these like maybe they're from 200 or 300 years earlier when they built all of Australia, right? And they built all of Adelaide and they built all these beautiful places that people are coming from before, because there's a lot of question about the history of, why Australia is built the way it is. But also it's playing on the Australian Aboriginals maybe brought their spirit or the spirit that's upset in nature, and it's taken over the machines and the machines are attacking people. So it's a really strange movie. Like, I don't completely think I understand it. Like it's weirder than almost any other. It's one of the, Australian horror films in general are weird. Sometimes a tire will just chase you the entire film. But in this one, you're particularly wondering what the heck is the deal with these submerged monsters the whole movie. And then it turns out maybe that they were just tractors.
Oh.
I remember that.
The reason they call Australia Oz.
But yeah, the frog dreaming thing, it's kind of like the frogs, like the frog dreaming will kill you or something. They'll kill you in your dreams.
Well, the Aboriginal thought of big dreaming. Dreams are very important for Australia. So
yeah, they were weaponizing the frog dreaming, though. It was part of the idea of the movie. I don't know. So this is definitely the weirdest thing to do, to go from E.T. to this. I don't know what the point was to make this movie.
Then he was in Fire in the Sky, Henry Thomas, which is... Have you seen Fire in the Sky?
Yes. That was him, huh?
Yeah.
I forgot. Okay, crazy.
Well, he's not...
Dude, I do not remember.
Dude, Hannah was just trying to call me. I was like looking for my phone. It was Hannah. I'll call her back. Hannah's in the
Hannah Craven?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is totally random. Every so often she'll call me. I was like, yeah, shout out to Hannah.
Apparently you're not watching, but I wish you were. Or maybe you are. And if you are, good to have you here. I don't remember what Fire in the Sky was about. It's like abduction.
Well, that's about the abduction of Travis Walton by gray aliens.
This is based on a true story, man, and which is funny because. So, that's interesting. So we got the kid from E.T. in Fire in the Sky, and then we got Christopher Walken in Communion, and they're together in Suicide Kings. What does it mean? Very similar movies in a way, Fire in the Sky and Communion.
Oh yeah,
and both based on a true story of alien abduction.
Yes,
or abduction.
Alleged.
Where did the alien touch
Doesn't matter if it's alleged or not. It's still on the table.
Sure.
No, both of those movies had said based on a true story. I remember that, and having like the raised eyebrow of like, can you just do that? Can you just say that? I guess it is. Okay.
I just put something up about Communion because it's weird. The movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Tim Burton. If you look at how that movie plays out, it's really loaded with like gray symbolism, which doesn't make any sense at first until you read Transformation by Whitley Strieber. Because in that book, Whitley says that the aliens told him not to eat chocolate because his DNA had been changed. And the whole book is him trying to like come to grips with that. So he's like trying to like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to eat chocolate if I want to. And then he has to like basically obey the visitors. But if you look at like everything about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, to the aesthetics, to the Oompa Loompas are basically dressed like the kobolds from Communion, which are the little blue guys.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But even the kids, like when the kids sucked up out of the chocolate, it's a UFO. Like if you go back and you look, it's a flying saucer. It's got like a little one of those classic little things coming down and picking up the kid. And you can align that with every single scene up until the monolith scene where he's basically like zapped into a Kubrick movie.
We're back to Roald Dahl again because he wrote that book. And how much pedophilic references are there in that film? It's like unbelievably. And I'm not like someone who's like is obsessed with this and is like everything, but like that movie is creepy.
Yeah. You have to admit, Yeah, it's true.
I don't know how you can read it in any other way, but
very strange. Like he's even gray. Like Willy Wonka is a gray color because he never leaves. And there's a scene,
dude.
There's a scene where he's in front where he goes back to Charlie to tell Charlie to come back, and Charlie's like, "Well, I'm with my family," and he's like, "Oh, I don't like the idea of families," which is like a classic idea for like the Greys, that
who wrote Wolfen?
So they have to use genetics to make their own children. But behind his head, it actually says Gray. When Charlie is getting his shoe shined, or Charlie is shining the shoes of Willie, behind his head it says Grays.
Right. Really so who wrote Wolfen? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Strieber. It was the same fucking guy. So that's the thing. So The Gray came out, which I believe was produced by Tony Scott, who killed himself like shortly afterwards. If you look at like that movie, it's all around suicide. It's him he's gonna kill himself. And then so I watched that movie and I was like, oh, am I tripping or is everybody dead? I was like, I think everybody died in the crash, and that they're fucking ghosts walking around, and the wolves are trying to liberate them from basically purgatory or whatever, and they're like actually like liberating them, and he's fighting for his life because that is the antithesis. Like it's so hard, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's all there, and that's why it's the Gray, is because it's actually like somehow strange attracting Wolfen and Communion in this really weird way.
The Greys are the wolves in transformation. There's one point where Strieber has been obsessed with wolves like his entire career, or like his entire life he was obsessed with wolves. So that's why he wrote Wolfen, and he actually wrote The Day After Tomorrow, which you'll also see wolves take a big part in that movie also, because he just loves them. But there's one point where he hears or sees like a spaceship outside, and he looks out the window, but all he sees are wolves.
Right.
So
what does the
Greys,
yeah,
the Greys are
totally.
Every single Strieber movie, but with the Wolfen, the Hunger, and Communion are all the same movie. They're all the same movie.
The Hunger
Even
came
in
out
the
exactly
book,
153 weeks after The Shining, by the way.
Oh shit.
Perfect little.
Good one. So okay. Oh fuck. What was the thing? Oh. God damn it. I can't remember. Sorry. Go on.
I'm just thinking about Goofy now and like Pluto. And, like, man versus God. Right. And what's the difference between dog and God and dog and dog? But this is this idea of this wolf, that is above us and below us in this pattern.
That makes
it's like
sense,
every direction.
because Strieber also said that he saw dead relatives or dead people that he knew, and he always goes on because it's the same thing. Like the land of the dead is the same thing as like the land of the ETs or whatever.
Dude, the book that The Gray was based off of was called Ghost Walker.
Well, that's perfect.
That's what I'm saying. And like, so I was tripping out on that before I knew that, or that whole connection. I'm like, oh, that's so The Gray is Alien. And Tony Scott and Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott does Alien. The Gray is what executive produced by Tony Scott. So it's like The Gray Alien. What the fuck? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, they even call him Mr. Almond. I think his name is like Ottawa or something like that in the movie, but somebody can't get his name right. So they come up and say, hey, Mr. Almond. He's like, he corrects them. But the almond eyes, like even the way that
Sure.
the like hold the gray up neck, and I think that there's even a book by Strieber called The Grays. It's really weird, man. It's really weird. Like there's so many things that like it's almost like winks and nods. But why?
Yeah, what the hell?
Why would
I
you
was
like?
watching
Why
old
would you
Jake
make a
Hudson videos,
movie, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that had anything to do with aliens? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, why would you make The Wizard of Oz? And I was struck by the comparing The Wizard of Oz, the visage of the face, to the gray alien or lamb channeled by Crowley.
Yeah.
And that then there's all like Crowley, the way he's related to 9/11, date-wise, it's like 15,330 days, and 1533 verses in Genesis. And
Crowley pretty much came up with the formula that we use today for false flag terrorism, like the basic formula of it, outlined in that book, Secret Agent 666, which is surprisingly empirical, and how I've discussed this with Andreas at length at different times. But the sinking of the Lusitania, we've gone over it plenty. But that basic formula is distinct from what we had seen in the past of what we would traditionally call false flag terrorism. And so the term gets thrown around a lot in a lot of places where it isn't really applicable. But this is one place where it is. And I relate the sinking of the Lusitania to 9/11 in certain ways as well, because it's not just the event, it's the way that the event was so convenient for propaganda purposes, where it's just like all the opportunism that surrounded it and kind of like enshrouded it. There's so many agendas attached to it at the same time, and the way that gets presented to the public. So, supposedly this was one of Crowley's big espionage involvement, something he was involved in, so yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I mean, it seems absurd to consider that the elite of the world were obsessed with Crowley, but it also seems that way from the symbolism of their weird rituals.
Yeah,
they definitely were or are.
Kubrick's family came in on the Lusitania, but a lot of people came in on the Lusitania. So,
well, let's talk about the book that was written about the Titanic like a decade before the Titanic actually sunk. Is that predictive programming?
Ooh, good question.
There's a novel written before the Oklahoma City bombing, predicting the Oklahoma City bombing, with a guy named Tim McVeigh doing it. I'm pretty sure anyway.
Really? Do you know about this, Will?
What? I have no idea about that. I was pretty.
Maybe you two should probably exchange notes when it comes to Oklahoma City bombing, Will and Alex. In general.
I have to look it up. I don't remember what it was called, but I think it was written by some sort of statesman, like Oklahoma, or like some low congressman. I'm talking out of my rear end though, so I probably shouldn't make claims until I know.
It's worse than if you publish a book, because at least when you publish a book, you can look it over a few times. When you're doing a podcast, you just and also sometimes the way you communicate something, you might leave out some important factor. I've been trying at the end of the shows to look through go back over what I said, and if there's something that I'm like, oh, I was wrong about that, or slightly off in a certain way or whatever, I'll try and communicate it in the comments.
So The Wreck of the Titan, or Futility by Morgan Robinson. Yeah, there it is.
Who the fuck thought it was a good idea to name the Titanic in the first place, considering what happened to the Titans? Am I
right?
I think that's probably the point, right? So there's a lot of stories that the Titanic was supposed to be an insurance fraud. But Andy, isn't that the story? What do you know about this? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just talking about the mythology.
Okay, look here. So
you heard this idea that the Titanic was supposed to be an insurance fraud kind of thing, right? Not just an insurance fraud, but also to kill a bunch of people that were involved with the Federal Reserve, or that might have been the way of the Jekyll Island crew. Is this wrong?
Yeah, I do know that the creature from Jekyll Island, all that, the idea that was it Rockefeller that conveniently wasn't on the on the
It was
Titanic or something?
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan.
And what's the other ship called that looked almost identical?
Yeah, its sister ship that was
Olympic.
literally identical. It was the same
So
ship.
so people were like, if you go into like Titanic groups online or whatever, frequently there'll be like there's like a disclaimer at the top that's just like, look, don't bring up the freaking Federal Reserve conspiracy and this other ship. You know, it's like they don't like it.
Like, really? Why are they? What the heck? Why are they censor that in every group? I mean, that's like the reason.
It's a thing. I've come across it. You know.
That's the most interesting conspiracy, is that they junked the old boat because you have a thing called the ship of Theseus, right? The ship of Theseus is the idea that if you take a boat apart, one piece by a piece, and as you build another piece boat of those parts, eventually you have a second boat made of the leftover pieces.
Is that kind of what like junk ships are in Asia?
I don't know. I don't think that's where the word comes from. I think junk has to do with polling or something like that. I don't really know. But the question is like, I wanted to see like a picture of two boats, which is really annoying. If I go to Wikipedia, that'll do it? No, nothing. Just imagine it, okay? Just imagine it. If you take two boats, if you take a boat and you replace each piece of the boat, but you take each piece off and you put it over somewhere else, and then eventually you sort that together and you have a boat. Which boat is the ship of Theseus? Is it the boat that always was the ship of Theseus, but doesn't have any of the original parts? Or is it this new boat that you just created, but it's made up of all the original pieces of the original ship of Theseus?
Right.
If you do that, what you get is a big apparatus that comes out of a pit in Australia in the middle of Frog Dreams.
Probably an Adelaide. God. I think that's
made out of... No, I don't know, man.
I want to clarify what I said earlier. That the governor of Oklahoma's brother wrote a novel called The Final Jihad, which was published before the Oklahoma City bombing, which was about bombing of that building, and the bomber's character's name is Tom McVeigh.
Whoa.
No, that's a different book you're looking at.
Oh, okay.
It's The Final. We're looking at what did you say?
The Final Jihad.
Oh, that is it? Oh, that is it.
I have
it. Oh, there it was.
By Joel Rosenberg?
No, wrong. You had it right the first time.
I had it right the first time.
I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm too critical. Sorry. Did you say Martin Keating the first time? I'm slipping up.
I don't know if I said his name. I just said the governor's brother.
I just used the force and let go of the handlebars. But I feel like this is pretty interesting. I mean, this is earlier, like I was saying about the Black Eye books, the series of books that were all about the skull and bones. Black Eye, CIA agent book. I don't know. I can't find it. Basically, what they'll do a lot of times is they'll say, okay, we're not allowed to disclose something. Okay, let's write a book about Schmacky Schmackerson. You know what I mean? Like Schmerich Schmoden or something like that. And then it'll be like this off the walls book that is then written by a pseudonym. And then that comes out and nobody reads it because there's like 2,000 published copies, that were in Washington, D.C. and they weren't in that many bookstores anyway or something. But people got it out. It was out there. They were able to sell, or a lot of the people read it. That also happens where it's like, but then they go and they try to arrest people that are Tom Clancy. You remember that? They tried to arrest Tom Clancy for putting up information.
Right. Well, Tom Clancy was hugely influential to various intelligence agencies and the military in general because people were all reading his books and it was actually like influencing the way that they related to all of it. And that's pretty crazy.
Back to Roald Dahl.
He died at 66, so that also makes me figure there's something up.
Yeah, didn't so Elvis died at 42 years old in 1977. 42 and 77. That's always felt significant to me.
He really wasn't that fat. I feel like this is at Elvis. I don't want to see the picture, but look at this is okay. At 42, he's a little bigger than he was when he was in his 20s. But let's be fair. Like, let's just say he wasn't obese Elvis. I get what they're saying. He's like chubby Elvis, maybe. Yeah. Chubby Elvis. I don't know. I'm just saying it's not really fat Elvis. Okay, maybe it's a little. I think they're stretching
alone. Out. Let's be clear. He was alone, guys.
Yeah. But 42 does come up, and then the idea the idea that he was trying to become and had successfully become a secret agent because he'd met with Nixon, and they gave him a badge that he was going to be a secret undercover agent to infiltrate the Black Panthers and the pseudo-American Marxist groups, right? That was his plan. Because he said, hey, even though I'm a red-blooded American, these musicians, these liberals, they might trust me. I think they do trust me. So I can infiltrate these rock music concerts. I can infiltrate these nefarious groups. I know what's going on. I know that there are secret cultural agendas being pushed on, right, of Marxism.
Okay. Alex, you're pretty familiar with Peter Levenda. He goes into Elvis and he goes into Marilyn Monroe. Do you remember you read Sinister Forces, probably all three of them, I imagine. So he when he goes off about Marilyn Monroe and he talks about that book that she kept where she had she was basically seeing all communists, all these different people on all sides, all these different men, and then she was basically had like this kind of protection. He makes the claim that he lists people. He's like John F. Kennedy, all these significant people. And he's like Marilyn Monroe was worth all of these in terms of like espionage. And it's kind of crazy that like both, the king and, freaking Marilyn Monroe seem like they were really involved, like directly. And it's that like both of those people, we kind of we had like an image of them. It's kind of like the Slim Shady thing where it's like there's actually the guy behind the guy that we think is the guy, like who Elvis was. Like, look at his fucking book collection. It was all like theosophy and like not just like books on yoga, but like the real stuff. Like he was just like he was apparently very
okay. He's a little fat.
Well, all that comes to mind here is that sorry to do. I get self-conscious about doing these number things, but the way the 1960s, if you go through the 1960s by 237 days, like you started January 1st, 1960, add 237 days, add 237, etc., on through the end of the decade, you land on certain points. And the second one, I think, well, I don't know. One of the points you land on is the death of Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
Another point you land on is the death of John F. Kennedy. Another point you land on is the death of Bobby Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole bunch of the Bay of Pigs invasion is one of them. So whoever, whatever connections they had in real life seem to be related to this sort of architecture that's
this brings us back to Mark, because it's just like just is the data. Do with it what you want. And that's the thing that I loved about Mark is he would just be like, do the exact same thing. We're like, that's a connection. What does it mean? I don't know. What do you think it means? And then you just keep going. And then he's like on to the next connection, on to the next. And it's like, those are all real connections.
He was pretty opinionated, let's say. He had his theories and the way things were. It's like he was prepared to he called it his Thunderdome mentality, where he was
right. So speaking of which, fucking Moonfall. Let's talk about it. We don't talk about it much, but like, dude, I'm pretty fucking convinced that Moonfall is fucking completely inspired from fucking Mark LeClaire, dude. And that like, there's even a character in the movie that I think is modeled off of Mark LeClaire for real.
He's the main character. It's all about
Moonfall
him.
Is a new blockbuster movie. It throws literally every conspiracy into it.
I can't believe that I talked to Mark last month.
The programming.
I didn't remember to tell him about this movie or ask him if he'd seen it.
You told him. What did he say? Did he say he's seen it?
No, I didn't. I forgot. I forgot.
Oh, you forgot to. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay, yeah. Well, he had pancreatic cancer. Is that the story?
Pancreatitis.
Oh shit, Patrick Wilson. Isn't he
Patrick
the
Wilson,
owl
Halle Berry next to Halle?
Right.
Patrick Wilson plays the owl in Watchmen, and he's in a movie called Moonfall. That's a little loaded.
Yep.
Oh, the whole thing is loaded, and I'm not pitching this movie like this is like a good movie, but like Mark's trip is like embedded into this movie to a degree that it's like it's pretty fucking on point with his trip. It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, it's his moon in the middle theory, and his whole belief or whatever theory that he had a whole model of the universe basically that he actually drew it out and he showed it to me once, but that we all actually live inside of the moon, We're like the reality is a mirrored spheroid where it's mirrored on the inside, and where it's a hologram. We're a holographic projection. So it's like the kind of thing where it's like, I can't tell you exactly the theory because I'm not Mark, but if you read the Sync book too, his essay in there is all about it, and it's a really beautiful piece of writing. If you can get a copy of the Sync book too,
like the phase of the moon.
Have you ever seen Koreshianity? Have you heard of Koreshianity? So Koreshianity is interesting to me because they started out in Florida, right? In Florida, in the same place that now Scientology is really big, but it's also where Ponce de Leon was looking for the Fountain of Youth. And I connect Ponce de Leon to Luke Perry because of Clone High, because he played in Clone High. There's a scene where Ponce de Leon dies. Wow, I forgot that just now. Have you seen Clone High? Do you remember
I used to watch it. Yeah, I used to.
Yeah. So Ponce,
big up to Nick Hinton, a
Ponce
Sync
de
head
Leon
who showed me the Christian thing. That's some deep shit right there. That you're kind of just passing it by.
No, I'm coming back. Don't worry. This is how I circle around. It's a spiral. But just the idea that Ponce de Leon, this is like years and years ago. This is 2003, 2, that they kill Ponce de Leon, the death of Ponce de Leon. And it's like this Luke Perry character who dies because of littering, essentially. I forget the whole thing. But then it connects back to Ponce de Leon in this Koresh Teed situation where Koresh talked about this idea of, or Cyrus did, but he called himself Koresh, that the entire universe was inside out and that all of the death was at the center of it. So it's kind of like a black hole that's sucking everything inwards. And we're looking at the inverse. And that would seem kind of confusing to people up until recently. Because now, if you think about it, this is how you would do a CGI universe in a video game. You would have density of information stored that you would zoom into that would be at the center. So everything would be inside out if you were trying to do it, unless you were trying to do things on a flat plane, which is ironically how most video games work, because otherwise light angle is funny. But still,
this movie Moonfall, like the character has this, he's obsessed with the moon, and it believes that the moon is hollow and it's not what we think, and of course he proves to be right, but in the end, not to spoil it or anything, but he merges with the moon, the intelligence of the moon itself.
He pulls a Gary Sinise
self-sacrifice. But then at the end of the credits, it's like he wakes up and he's like conscious, but in the moon or whatever. It's like
it's very Gary Sinise from Mission to Mars.
Yeah, it is.
I thought you were going to say Gary Sinise in the other one. Wasn't Gary Sinise in Apollo 13?
Yeah,
he was.
But he didn't go.
So that was the thing, is that in the book Forrest Gump goes to the moon.
Right.
And then he ends up deserted on an island. So what's that?
So in the movie, he says they're talking about astronauts or Lieutenant Dan being an astronaut or whatever. But when he gets his legs, his artificial legs, he's like, it's made out of the same stuff that the space shuttle's made out of.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, totally. So there's that. And then, he, in the book Forrest Gump, he ends up on a desert island. And then, you have Castaway. So it's just, it's like all, I don't think it's intentional, but maybe it's about as intentional as how many movies he urinates in.
Right. Yeah.
Tom Hanks urinates more than any other actor in more movies that I know of. It's crazy.
The best thing about Tom Hanks is the Maze of Madness. Is that what it's called? Maze and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters, his first movie.
And incredibly clear and like the whole idea of his little wraparound with the World Trade Center, like him almost jumping off the World Trade Center and then actually jumping off the World Trade Center like 20, 30 years later is really bizarre.
What is that called? Up loud, incredibly personal, or some bullshit? Did I get it wrong?
Up close and incredibly loud, or incredibly clear, or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So he's one of the people who had leapt off the towers in this movie, and then in his first movie, he's trying to commit suicide by jumping off the two towers, and his friends show up and stop him. Yeah.
But then there's all this other stuff, like him being in the World Trade Center and other movies, and it's just weird.
Right. Hey,
somebody's already got it.
Mazes and Monsters should be required viewing before watching the latest Stranger Things season.
Just saying. Sure.
Hey, CR Smythe asks, I'm curious if 762 is also a number that comes up because you show how it would be a mirror of 237, and I was going to say that that is mirror of 26/7, and so Kubrick's birthday is 7/26. Kubrick's birthday and Carl Jung's birthday and so many other people, but that's just to answer your question.
July 26th. You know what's weird is my birthday is July 25th, and so is Goro Adachi's.
July 25th?
Yeah, the day before those.
Cool.
So there's a... Yeah, it's weird.
I'm not surprised. No, put it that way. Leo's.
Yeah, it's a weird Leo thing, I think.
It's cool to see you using that Gematria resource, Andreas, because that's the best one that I know of online.
Yeah, I figured switch to the good one, always use the best.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, guys? I think we're at 2 hours deep. Is there anything else you wanted to say before I show them where they can get some of your content?
No,
I'm good.
All right, I'm gonna jump into that next. I want to go to the YouTube / the Deep Share podcast. Let's go with that. Andy's got some amazing content. I feel bad because we didn't jump into more of the stuff that you did this week. Because
that's all right. That's all right. But I'm coming out. The new episodes are coming out tomorrow, or that's when it's starting. Yep. So I got new stuff coming out. I've been putting out some swap casts and stuff like that recently. But
what's your tomorrow's episode going to be about?
Tomorrow's episode is called "Death on a Mountain."
Okay.
I'll let you digest that on that. But then on Friday, I do actually, you know what? Here, I'm going to put in I just sent you a link in the chat. There's a researcher that I'd like everyone to check out, and he's coming on Friday. I'm putting out a 2-part episode on Friday. His name is Dwayne Hayes. He runs Bulletproof Publishers, and he's basically dissected the entire 20th century, and he's got receipts. And it's insane. And it's basically a lot of what we talk about, what we circle around, but he's putting it all together in this very, formidable way. It's just, it's really good stuff. So can't wait to present this with his work.
Fantastic. Yeah. So these are the kinds of things you can expect to see from the Deep Share podcast. So make sure you go to the Deep Share podcast. .com, but also to the YouTube, because the YouTube's where a lot of the videos are easily. Just subscribe there. Easy.
YouTube, Rockfin.
And then let me see if I can go to Crypto Alchemist. No, I'm gonna go to Twitter. It's easier this way. I'll just type in Crypto Kubrology. There it is. If you guys look for Crypto Kubrology, you can get Alex's amazing work. He's also got a YouTube channel right here. Easiest way that I found to find it if you miss it.
That's Sean's YouTube for the record, but yeah.
That's why. Okay, that makes more sense.
My Twitter page is his YouTube channel.
He does have some cool videos through Sean. He's worked with a lot of people in the sync community to put out some information. But if you go to his Twitter, he's putting out a lot of great information. For instance, that the CIA was created on Kubrick's 19th birthday and opened for business when he was 999 weeks old. Kubrick died the very same day and year that Sidney Gottlieb, the director of the CIA's MK Ultra and Division 19. So if you need some really crazy icebreakers ever, like if you were in a library or an art museum and everyone was really quiet, you just walk up to a table at like a wedding or a baptism or bar mitzvah and you just say one of these tweets. Like you can pull out your phone and then you come up to a table and everyone would just be like, oh, and you'll immediately divide the room. They'll love you or hate you right then. You'll know who your people are. So,
well, it says there right in my profile quote, and this is actual feedback that I got from somebody. Some of the most schizo shit I've ever seen.
Schizotypal.
I took it as a compliment.
You should.
I love it though. I think we should just
wear it like a badge of honor.
Will, do you have a website or a place I should take?
Yeah, actually, I have a YouTube channel I have blogs. I was on the Sinkhole with Jake Katza. If you're interested in the old blogs and a few shots to Shaman. But I would really like some help with my YouTube channel.
Sinkhole is with WHOLE.
Yes, the
Sinkhole,
which is an OG sync blog. Which since we mentioned them tonight, I think that it would be cool to mention. But also, the Meta Egg has been mostly marketed to the Easter Egg YouTube channels. So I need some help on some subscribers. If you're a sync head, just go in there and subscribe for me. That would be greatly appreciated. But also, I'd like to give a little shout out to the Retro Station Baltimore with Christopher Hunter Myers. I'm sure that that guy would be a good guest for you to talk to also. But he's done a lot of help for me, like finding research and DVDs. If you follow him on Instagram and you need anything that you can't find on streaming.
Yeah. Are we talking about Chris Myers? Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
Chris Myers is also cool. It's like Retro Store Baltimore.
Retro Station. Yeah.
Retro Station Baltimore. Yeah, dude, awesome, like, and rad human being, very useful, like, good person in life. Buy his merch. And like, yeah, if you needed a DVD or a vinyl record or some crazy Betamax from Germany or something like that, this is your new plug. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. And then also David Plate, if you guys are going to look for the Synctank, go to thesyncbook.com, thesyncbook.com, go mosey on down here, all the way to here, click on Syncflix, or go to videos at the top right there, and then go here and click Syncflix. Either way, here are David's videos. He's got a new one out right now.
So
it's got music with Amelia that he worked on.
Scroll down a little ways. Keep going. I mean, go through the videos here. I want to point out a video that's relevant to our talk that came up earlier. So not too fast. Hey. Did we go past it? I'm not sure. Maybe you didn't go past it. Maybe you should just keep. Oh, there it is. So the one that right there, back. Oh, the one that says the untethering on the left. So scroll wherever you were a second ago. Sorry, there it is. The untethering. So that one, this one is the one I was actually recommending to you, Alex, too, a while back. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's us with the Shining mirrored against itself below it with Saul Williams' Amethyst Rockstar. There's levels to this that I was talking about at the beginning of the show that I didn't even realize. Like, it's like this is crazy. So I actually got a like from this from Saul Williams. He follows me on Twitter, but I haven't gotten him to say anything about it. So I'm like, I just got a like, and that made my day. But yeah, this is a sync I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I'll check that one out for sure. I watched some of your about half of the Black Stallion.
Oh yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, it's beautiful, huh?
Really into that.
Yeah, totally awesome. And then that relates to Titanic, which is so crazy because she had Titanic Rising, Wiseblood did, and I paired it. It's in here somewhere with the probably up higher with the I think it's 1954 version of Titanic with Robert Wagner, and there it is. And so, like, this is crazy. This is an incredible pairing. But then you have this other Wiseblood album, and they said that I found a quote from Steven Spielberg where he said that the E.T.'s glowing heart was this woman's name. This woman, I forget, Marissa Matheson, something like that. But she was one of the writers of the dialogue for the children in Black Stallion. And so I was like, this album came out, and I was like, oh, I wish that there was like some horse reference because it feels like this is connected to Black Stallion. And then I get the LP in the mail right after I said that. And it's like, I open it up and it's just like the inner sleeve is just like her on a horse. So I'm just like, oh, what the hell? I was like, is there a horse reference here? And it's like as direct as I could have hoped for. So yeah. And then if you watch Black Stallion, it ends with this ship sinking and the horse swims to shore with this kid. And so basically it starts with that. Yeah, exactly. And so, but I didn't remember the Black Stallion very well at all from when I was a kid. I didn't know that. And so it's just like, I was like, oh, well, too bad there's not like a Titanic sync somehow. Cause she seems like in the later music videos for this more recent album, she's still doing the Titanic thing. And so that's the connection apparently.
I think that
one was really weird. I like that.
The Black Stallion. Oh yeah. It's like in Stanley Kubrick's Life in Pictures. They show a handwritten note of him about films they had watched with the family. I know we got to go, but Black Stallion was one of them they were watching, and then I think the picture of the wall, the Alex Colville painting of the horse in the apartment in Boulder in The Shining, is the horse on a train track, and it's sort of very conspicuously placed as they walk by it, and so yeah, the Black Stallion. What does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I could go on about it, but I think we're pressed for time. But yeah. Soon. Yeah.
Thank you guys. That was
thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
That was a funny mimery there. We'll do it again soon. I was trying to say we'll do it again next week, and then also anytime we'll talk again. And if you guys are interested, come to charteringnova.com. You can join the Discord and you can interact with these guys. If there's anything you want us to specifically talk about, you could have super chatted. You can also go to the Discord. We'll talk to you there. And in the meantime, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow and enjoy yourselves. And it was good to have you guys. I appreciate
Great
you.
to be here. Thanks.
Peace.
Peace. Oh wait, that was the wrong button. Or this one over here.